Hey guys, tonight we slip through the palace's towering golden gates. Lantern light flickering across jade-carved columns like ghostly dancers draped in silk. The air hangs heavy with the scent of sandalwood and secrets, and you probably won't survive this if you assume it's another cozy bedtime story. Your pulse hammers in your ears as you step onto mosaic floors, polished to a silken sheen. Each footfall a reminder that you're far from home. You thought you were here to receive honor, but blind loyalty is just another chain. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, post your location and local time below so I know which brave souls are wide awake with me. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge deeper into the winding halls, silk screens whispering behind you as if gossiping about your fate. A hush falls over the marble, and you realize that the same corridors that once promised glory now serve as golden bars. The lacquered pillars drip with firecracker red lacquer, and you can almost taste the sweet tang of powdered cinnabar in the stale air. Your heart skips when a cluster of lanterns swings overhead. Remember those lantern dancers from the intro? This is no festive gala dat. Each alcove glimmers with jade-inlaid panels depicting phoenixes in flight, a symbol of the emperor's favor and cruelty. Spoiler alert, you're neither bird nor flame. You brush a fingertip against cool gold leaf, marveling that artisans spent months gilding each tile. In fact, the role of male concubine dates back to the Tang dynasty, when young men were handpicked for their beauty and wit to entertain the court with music and poetry. A reminder that privilege can smell a lot like prison. One fringe tidbit no one tells bedtime historians: some favorites were said to receive a dab of crocodile dung sunscreen on their cheeks to maintain a ghostly pallor, though that little factoid may owe more to palace gossip than medical journals. Historians still argue whether these men were volunteers or coerced, since official records never quite agree on whether a golden coin was worth a lifetime of shadows. You shuffle forward, the silk of your robe whispering like a secret. You recall that first morning parade, standing before rows of incense burners, trying not to sneeze, never a good look when you're in royal favor. A eunuch glides past, his expression unreadable, clipboard in hand, because nothing says romance like bureaucratic efficiency. Joke: imagine having HR reviews in a palace that locks you in. Your reflection flickers in a polished bronze bowl filled with water. You stare at eyes rimmed with exhaustion thicker than palace mud. You try to remember why you thought this would be an upgrade from village life, from muddy boots and cabbage soup. The mosaic underfoot tells a different story. Fish swimming upstream, their scales rendered in vivid enamel. It's pretty sure, but somehow it feels like a warning. Imagine a YouTube thumbnail with fish chasing you through a hallway too niche. Probably. At the end of one corridor, you stop before a massive door studded with carved dragons. Their eyes, tiny rubies, seem to blink. A hush sweeps over you again as a soft chime ring announces that someone has summoned you. This is the moment you realize the gilded gate isn't just an entrance, it's a lock. You can't go back the way you came. You step inside, the door closing behind you with a decisive thud. And in that instant, those golden gates sealed more than your schedule. They sealed your very choices. No back door, no secret tunnel. Just shadows and spectacle. You're exactly where they want you. Weeks blur into a rehearsed dance, morning teas, music lessons on the gukeen, meticulous hair arrangements that take hours. You thought your morning routine was tedious? Try balancing a headdress the size of a fruit platter. You drift past others like you pale young men in embroidered robes, each vying for a tilt in favor, smiles as brittle as lacquerware. A single misstep, forgetting the right bow or sneezing at the wrong moment, could send your standing plummeting like a broken jade figurine. One morning, you catch a glimpse of yourself in a polished bronze mirror. Your cheeks are sunken, lips the color of faded embroidery. Yet the emperor's portrait above the dais watches you with cold appraisal. One mainstream historical fact: during the Qing dynasty, court favorites had to memorize over 100 proper phrases to address the emperor, a form of verbal chainmail. Suddenly, rhetoric feels like shackles. In restless nights, you toss on silk sheets scented with jasmine oil, a fringe detail said to lull concubines to obedient dreams, though in your case, it only amplifies your longing. Historians still argue whether these scented rituals were soothing or another form of control. Either way, you wake at odd hours, listening for footsteps echoing on stone floors, wondering if today is the day your name is called or erased. And as you pace the courtyard, under the moon's cold glow, you remember that lantern light from earlier, dancing like distant hope. But hope in the emperor's court burns as unpredictably as palace fireworks, bright, loud, and able to blind you. Honestly, I'd stick to Netflix marathons instead. Your shadow stretches across carved Zeytinwood benches, and you realize that reflection is pointless. The palace sees only what it wants you to be. A concubine, an ornament, an echo of glory with a voice silenced by gilded rules. Every elaborate tapestry, every stone-etched dragon, all whisper the same chilling message: you belong no more to yourself. You wake before dawn to the faint trill of a court musician, practicing a bamboo flute down the hall, each note like a drop of water echoing through porcelain corridors. The air is cool and slightly sweet, perfumed by incense coils smoldering in bronze censers flanking every doorway. You slip from your silk sheets, still warm from jasmine oil, and pad across marble floors, frost cold beneath your feet. In the distance, the first eunuch appears, his face as unreadable as carved jade. You bow deeply, elbows almost scraping the floor, then press your hands together in greeting. This is your first ritual of the day, the licky, or ceremony of respect. Screw a morning latte try, balancing 3 layers of silk robes while remembering 8 precise bows before sunrise. By candle glow, you join the circle of concubines, each clutching a porcelain teacup. You sample teas infused with orchid petals, meant to soothe your nerves and possibly to dull your memories of home. One mainstream historical fact: during the Qing dynasty, the Palace of Eternal Spring housed up to 100 male favorites who were expected to sip pu'er tea every dawn to demonstrate their refined tastes. Their opinions could rise or fall on whether the blend was smoky enough, because nothing says job security like debating fermented leaves. After tea, you shuffle into a mirrored chamber where the master of rites inspects your posture, hand gestures, and even your breath. You practice writing calligraphy under his steely gaze, brush swaying in your hand like a dragon's tail. A single misplaced stroke, drawing dragon instead of phoenix, could cost you face and favor. Historians still argue whether these morning manuscripts were meant as genuine art or secret codes used to transmit palace gossip. But either way, your shaky ink blot hands aren't making you any friends. Joke: imagine trying to text autocorrect in classical Chinese. By mid-morning, you're ushered into the Hall of Alignment, a grand room tiled in lapis blue mosaic. Here, you and 24 others present poetry recitals for the imperial librarian, whose thumbs hover like a hawk ready to pluck your lines apart. You muster a gentle rhyme about lotus blossoms and longing, hoping to impress. A wrong rhyme scheme or a mispronounced tone sends muffled giggles rippling through the audience. Fringe tidbit: some favorites secretly dip their quills in powdered ground jade to give their ink a faint shimmer, because nothing screams artistic genius like your words literally glittering under scrutiny. Next comes the linjiang ritual, where you kneel before a tiered altar stocked with lotus paste, candied melons, and carved sugar dragons. You offer the emperor symbolic gifts: your voice, your loyalty, your undying willingness to recite endless compliments. If you Fumble the phrase, "May your brilliance outshine the sun." You're exiled to duller duties, cleaning urine bowls. Joke, talk about a career pivot. One fringe rumor whispered among palace servants claims that concubines sometimes practice swallowing a live firefly to perfect their nighttime glow. A story probably more myth than method, but it keeps everyone on edge. Lunch is served on long lacquered tables beneath painted ceilings of flying cranes. You're given a modest portion of lotus root stew, but you watch as favored companions receive multiple silk-wrapped dumplings filled with gold-leafed dates, a privilege that tastes like humiliation. A mainstream historical fact: under Emperor Kanshi, male concubines could be promoted to Guanghui attendant, earning silk sashes embroidered with phoenix feathers. Promotion was announced by jingling bells instead of court drums, so you never heard the good news coming. Joke, imagine a ringtone made of tiny bells summoning you to greatness. Afternoon brings favor-making exercises, strategic conversations, and carefully timed laughter to please passing ministers. You memorize gossip about rival consorts and rehearse flattery lines. Your wisdom rivals the mountains, or your grace puts swans to shame. Each compliment must be sincere enough to fool the most suspicious ear. Historians still argue whether this flattery farmed true alliances or simply bred dangerous envy. Meanwhile, you slip a tiny scroll with a coded compliment under a silk cushion, hoping to curry favor without getting caught by twilight. You practice court dances in a chill pavilion overlooking koi ponds. Your feet trace patterns on the stone floor while silk ribbons trail behind you like trailing comets. Jokes aside, if you trip over your hem, you risk becoming a cautionary tale. Remember Concubine Li, who snapped her ankle during the dragon dance and never recovered her standing. That story echoes through corridors like an unwanted ringtone. Dinner is a silent affair in the moonlight chamber. You sit on a cushion of embroidered brocade, spooning noodles in a broth scented with osmanthus blossoms. A single noodle dangling from your lip could earn a pointed glance or worse, a public reprimand that echoes louder than temple bells. Fringe tidbit: to maintain perfect posture, some concubines wore padded wooden shoes that were only removed when sleeping, turning every step into a wooden performance piece. You're not sure how anyone survived more than a day. Night falls, and the grand audience beckons. You stand before the emperor, whose throne is carved from black ebony and inlaid with mother of pearl. Candlelight flickers off his jeweled cloak, casting his expression into sharp relief. You recite your daily report, a recitation of tasks, poems, and small acts of flattery. Then comes the moment of truth. You wait for that barely audible word of approval, a nod, or a toss of a handkerchief. No response means you've been forgotten. A mainstream historical fact: during early Han times, favorites wore colored sashes to signal the emperor's mood: red for joy, blue for indifference, so you always knew if you were in good standing or headed for the bucket brigade. All day, you've danced through a minefield of etiquette, each smile rehearsed, each bow calibrated. One wrong note, forgetting the correct tone, using a banned phrase, or accidentally hiccuping during an audience, could shatter your fragile standing and turn your gilded cage into a cell of obscurity. And as you slip back to your quarters under flickering lantern light, you realize that every flourish of silk, every bowed head, every scene of lotus paste and jade shimmer is part of one endless performance. You collapse onto your embroidered mat, thinking about the next sunrise that will summon you to repeat the ritual. The courtyard outside is silent now, save for the occasional rustle of bamboo leaves. Despite the luxury, you feel chained in routine, imprisoned by velvet petals and golden rules. You wonder if any of those other concubines feel the same ache in their chest, or if they're too busy polishing their poems and their smiles to notice. And just like that, your day ends where it began, in a palace of shifting favor, where chains are hidden beneath layers of silk and laughter masks desperation. You close your eyes, preparing to rise again at dawn for the same lavish rituals, the same hidden chains, because in the Emperor's court, yesterday's victory is today's forgotten song. You rouse yourself in the dead of night, roused by a single distant gong that trembles through your bones like a warning. Moonlight filters through paper screens, casting a pale grid across your silk mat, and you probably won't sleep again after what's coming. You slip into your embroidered robe, its weight familiar yet suffocating, and pad silently past darkened corridors lined with stone lanterns whose flames gutter in the draft. The scent of jasmine oil has been replaced by cold stone and the faint tang of iron and unspoken promise of what awaits. A eunuch awaits you at the threshold of the midnight hall, his eyes hollow lanterns in the gloom. You bow so low that the jade hairpin nearly grazes the floor, and he nods once, dismissively. This is no invitation to tea. The hall stretches before you, pillars carved with dragons that coil into the shadows, their mouths open as if to devour any who dare approach. You step onto the polished marble, heart drumming so loud it drowns out even the hush of your own breath. Here begins the Jiaoxing trial, a ritual dating back to the early Ming dynasty when concubines accused of disloyalty were brought before masked officials for midnight interrogations. One mainstream historical fact: during the reign of Emperor Yongle, these midnight trials were said to last until sunrise, testing both loyalty and composure under pressure. You stand at the center of a circle of silent witnesses draped in black brocade, their faces hidden beneath silk masks stitched with silver thread. A single torch flares, illuminating the judge's ivory mask. The air crackles as he raises a slender rod, an innocuous baton that can deliver lashes or simply point accusingly. You recited the wrong tone in court, he announces, voice echoing off jade inlays. You swallow as dozens of eyes pin you. In place, one fringe detail whispers through palace lore. Some favorites claimed they were forced to ingest crushed lotus seeds, mixed with ground ginger as a form of truth serum, though historians still argue whether that was customary or merely another psych-out tactic. You shiver at the thought of biting into bitter seeds while the judge watches, waiting for a confession you may or may not be ready to make. Your pulse flutters when the magistrate signals the first test. You must recite a poem praising the emperor's latest autumn hunt, but with your voice muted by a silence ritual. A thin silk gag keeps your lips parted but wordless. You inhale the cool night air, taste the faint bitterness of resin on your tongue, and begin to hum the melody you practiced. At dawn, each note must echo exact pitches or risk punishment. Joke: imagine trying karaoke with a chapstick in your mouth. Halfway through, you falter, your throat clenches. A hiss ripples through the masked assembly. The judge taps his rod against the marble. You freeze. His voice slices the quiet. Procedure incomplete. Suddenly, servants fling open a cedar chest and extract a coiled whip. The crack of leather on stone rings like temple bells at launch, an ironic soundtrack for your agony. You feel the first lash across your bare forearm, a burning arc that makes you gasp. Yet you hold the poem's final line on your lips, swallowing the scream you'd like to unleash. Historians still argue whether such physical punishments were recorded officially or preserved only in hush-hush palace whispers. Either way, you count each strike as if tallying the seconds until sunrise. When at last the whip falls silent, you're shoved before a low table scattered with porcelain shards and inkstones. The judge instructs you to assemble a broken plate using the ancient art of kintsugi, binding fragments with gold lacquer. You kneel on cold marble, fingertips trembling as you piece together the cratered porcelain. Legend says this ritual symbolizes the concubine's worth in scars, but fringe scholars debate whether it honored resilience or humiliated those already broken. You smooth gold into each crack, mindful of every shard, each a reminder that your status is built on other people's discipline. You rise with stained fingers and a bowed head. No applause greets your craftsmanship. only the judge's silent nod. Then the torches gutter low and the masked figures recede into darkness, leaving you alone with the echo of your own breathing. You trace a fingertip along a gold line on the fine plate. Remember that shimmer from morning's jade dust ink? It feels like a cruel callback. You gather the lacquered plate as your only reward and shuffle back through moonlit gardens where lotus leaves gleam like specters in the pond outside. The courtyard is quiet save for cicada's distant drone. You press your palm against the cool stone of an altar, trying to steady the tremor in your limbs. A single firefly drifts by. Someone said concubines once sucked on fireflies to perfect a gentle shimmer in moonlight, though no one can confirm if that was nursing or nonsense. Historians still argue whether these midnight ordeals were formal punishments or mere psychological warfare. You cradle your fractured plate like a trophy, a battered symbol of survival, of having endured when others might have crumbled. As you slip back into your chamber, dawn is still hours away. Your silk robe clings damp to your skin, and exhaustion weighs heavier than any whip. You brush the gold-seamed plate against your heart, drawing solace from its fragile beauty. The lantern dancers from your first night would be proud if they weren't just painted flames on silk walls. You collapse onto your jade-carved bench, plate nestled beside you, and let the dark lull you into a fragile rest. And as the first distant gong announces the coming sun, you realize cruelty here is not always loud. Its softest whispers can haunt you longer than any lash. You slip through the lantern-lit corridor toward the scholar's pavilion, heart thumping louder than a war drum rehearsal. The moonlight gleams off polished marble, casting long shadows that flicker like silent bystanders to your secret rendezvous. You probably thought the worst in this palace was a public whipping. Turns out, forbidden's desire cuts deeper than leather. There, beneath painted eaves of celestial blue and vermilion, stands Li Wei, the palace librarian whose soft voice once judged your poetry and whose laughter you stole like contraband. Tonight, you owe him more than flattery. You owe him truth. Your fingers brush against embroidered silk as you approach, recalling the jasmine-scented softness of your own robes and how that fragrance drifted over to Li Wei's table weeks ago. Joke, who knew scented oils could double as love letters? He greets you with a cautious bow, eyes glinting with the same mix of longing and fear you feel in your chest. A stray breeze lifts a corner of his robe, revealing the glimmer of his jade pendant, your secret signal, carved in the shape of a pair of cranes locked in mid-flight. Fringe tidbit. Some concubines supposedly sewed tiny messages into their hairpins using ant's blood as ink. Talk about ant-si love notes, right? Historians still argue whether such methods were common practice or merely palace gossip spun into legend. You settle on lacquered stools, the air fragrant with osmanthus blossoms from the nearby courtyard. Li Wei presses a small porcelain cup into your hand. Milky tea studded with petals of night-blooming cereus, said to heighten quiet confessions. You inhale its gentle aroma, wondering if Emperor Kangxi ever knew how his favorites brewed rebellion by the cupful. One mainstream historical fact: during the Qing era, male courtiers often exchanged private poetry beneath moonlit pavilions, a custom meant to display refined wit, but equally likely to ignite jealous rage among rivals. You sip and feel warmth bloom, as if courage itself infuses your veins. You lean in, voice soft enough to blend with the night's whisper. I wrote a new verse for you, you murmur, sliding a folded slip of jade-dusted paper across the table. Words shimmer in pale gold. In your gaze I find both empire and exile. His smile falters, and you wonder if it bruised his heart or simply stunned him into silence. Joke, smooth move, Romeo, just add powdered jade. He unfolds the poem, eyes tracing each line, and for a moment, the world beyond this pavilion palace intrigues. Eunuch patrols. The emperor's frown falls away, yet you know this moment balances on a razor's edge. A single guard's footstep on the marble path, a stray lantern toppling, Any misstep could bring the entire court down on you. Li Wei reaches out, brushing your fingertips. His touch is electric, the weight of stolen kisses heavier than any. Silk robe. You remember the kintsugi plate from your midnight trial, how gold filled cracks to make beauty from brokenness. Now in this pavilion, your heart fractures and mends under someone else's hand. Historians still argue whether such bonds between concubines and scholars were ever sanctioned or simply erased from official records to protect reputations. A soft click echoes behind you. You freeze, recognizing the hinge of a carved wooden screen. Through the lattice you glimpse a silhouette Prince Yang, the emperor's nephew, notorious for his ruthless ambition. His eyes narrow as he watches you, and Li Wei share a fleeting smile. You swallow, heart pounding like palace drums. Gearing up for battle. A joke tries to rise. Guess your love note was CCD to the entire clan, but it drowns in your throat. Jealousy in this court isn't a rumor. It's a weapon sharpened on palace intrigues. Yang steps forward, cloak rustling like dry leaves. What delicate conspiracy are you two plotting? He asks, voice dripping silk and venom. The air tenses. Even the lantern flames seem to quiver. Li Wei stands, pressing his hand to his chest in a measure of respect, but pride flares in his eyes. Only verses, he replies, voice steady. Verses and truth. Prince Yang laughs, a brittle sound that cracks the moonlit hush. Truth? In the emperor's court. Better to hide truth in poetry, friend. He flicks the jade pendant from Li Wei's robe and holds it aloft, light glinting off its surface. I believe His Majesty will be interested to know how poetic justice is dispensed here. A guard slinks forward. The jade pendant is pocketed, and Li Wei's face drains of color. You step between them, voice pitched low but clear. This is but a harmless exchange of culture and art. You bow so deeply your forehead nearly kisses the marble. Joke. Might as well prostrate yourself on YouTube for views, right? Yang raises an eyebrow, amusement dancing at the corners of his lips. Art can be seditious, he says. But telling the emperor I found you two here, that could be disastrous. Disastrous is an understatement. Tailies abound of favorites falling from grace overnight, stripped of titles, tossed into exile, sometimes disappearing without a tombstone. One mainstream historical fact, Emperor Qianlong, notoriously executed, a favorite attendant, accused of writing subversive poems, though records differ on whether the man's verses advocated rebellion or merely criticized palace waste. You glance at Li Wei, whose throat works as he swallows. Fringe scholars debate whether that execution truly happened, or if it's a rumor fueled by pamphlets banned before they could spread. Prince Yang extends a cold invitation. Join me at dawn for a discussion with His Majesty. Or decline and explain why your loyalty remains intact. You feel the walls close in, carved dragons poised to swallow your defiance. Loyalty here is currency, and you've just bartered yours for a stolen heartbeat. Li Wei kneels, voice cracking. We meant no disrespect, Your Highness. His words fall between you like fragile petals in a storm. Yang turns away, tossing the jade pendant onto a stone bench. See that he retrieves it, he says, voice trailing off. And remember, true alliances lie with those who choose power over fleeting affection. With that, he melts into shadow, leaving you and Li Wei alone under the eaves. The pendant lies abandoned, its twin cranes fractured. Li Wei scoops it up, jaw set. I will keep my word, he whispers. And I choose you. You swallow hard, the weight of his promise settling in your chest. A soft breeze carries the scent of lotus paste from the morning rituals, a reminder that every ritual can be twisted into a trap. Historians still argue whether concubines ever dared defy princes for love, or if all tales of rebellion were penned later to romanticize doomed passions. You rise, gathering Li Wei's hand in yours. Together, you slip back through moonlit halls. the jade pendant wrapped in your sleeve like a promise and a weapon. Tomorrow you will face the Emperor. Tomorrow you may pay for this moment. But tonight, in the quiet glow of lantern light, you choose love over safety, and that choice carries its own cruel retribution. You shuffle through the hushed corridor toward the Lion's Gate, where the Emperor awaits to deliver your final fate. Your silk robes, once symbols of privilege, now feel like wet sails dragging through mud, each step a battle against the weight of every betrayal and every tender stolen moment. Lanterns cast drifting pools of amber light that tremble against carved dragons, their mouths frozen in silent roars, and you might swear they judge you more kindly than the Emperor will. The faint scent of lotus blossoms drifts from a nearby pond, a bittersweet callback to those lullaby nights after the midnight trials. Joke, nothing like floral air fresheners to announce impending doom, right? Before you lie rows of painted screens depicting past favorites exiled for transgressions. One shows a nobleman's confidant clutching a cracked teacup, another a eunuch's favorite wearing a broken jade bracelet. You recall your own kintsugi plate, its golden seams highlighting scars rather than hiding them. A mainstream historical fact, during the Qin dynasty, disgraced courtiers and favorites were often exiled to distant provinces such as Yunnan or Sichuan, serving as local entertainers, or minor officials under strict surveillance, turning palace prestige into provincial performance. Historians still argue whether exile offered true redemption or simply erased these figures from the imperial narrative. The massive doors swing open, and you step onto a raised dais where the Emperor reclines on a throne carved from sandalwood inlaid with mother of pearl. Candlelight flutters against his jade crown, turning his expression into an inscrutable mask. You bow so low your forehead nearly kisses the mahogany floor, your heart pounding louder than palace drums. A eunuch hands you a folded scroll, your life's record of poems, dances, clandestine verses, and stolen glances. Ink smudges mar the margins where your tears once fell. In gold leaf, the Emperor's annotations read, ambition unchecked, allegiance questionable, trust revoked. He peers down, voice smooth as lacquer. You have served with distinction, yet your loyalties have strayed, he intones. Somewhere beyond the hall, a lone bamboo flute trills a plaintive note, an eerie callback to the dawn rituals you once endured. You hold your breath, recalling the delicate art of calligraphy under the Master of Rites and the public teas where every sip was a quiz. His tone softens, surprising you. I grant you clemency through exile, he announces. Swear fealty to your new station in the provinces. Renounce any claim of imperial favor, and you may live beyond these walls. You blink, chest tight, as if you can inhale both relief and loss in a single gasp. Joke, worst-case scenario, free travel package included. A hush ripples through the assembled court. You glance at the carved pillars dragons frozen mid-scream, and imagine Li Wei's jade pendant pressed against his chest, a silent plea across miles. Exile might fracture you, but rumor says it gilds you in legend. A fringe tidbit surfaces. Some favorites were said to apply powdered snail slime masks to preserve youth in harsh climates, a beauty hack as dubious as palace gossip. Historians still argue whether such rituals were widespread or mere whispers. Spun into legend by bored court scribes, you step forward, voice steady with second-person resolve. I accept your judgment, you murmur, kneeling to place the scroll at the Emperor's feet like a final offering. Silk sashes of deep crimson are tied around your wrists, a mark of your new life as traveler rather than ornament. Guards step back and the painted screens slide shut, cocooning you in an ivory hush. The lantern dancers you glimpsed on your first night flicker dimly before being extinguished, each flame snuffed out like a chapter-closing dot as you're escorted. Through the Lion's Gate, the palace walls rise behind you like silent sentinels of your vanished glory. You walk beneath carved stone lions, their stony eyes fixed on your retreating silhouette. A soft breeze carries jasmine and the faint echo of midnight drums, reminding you that the court's heartbeat still pulses behind those gates. You press a hand to your chest, feeling the rhythm of a life you once knew now foreign. Beyond the gate lies a dark pathway lined with bamboo groves, their leaves whispering as if consoling or mocking you. A carriage painted with phoenix motifs waits, wheels spoked in gold. You climb aboard, silk robes rustling like dying wings. The carriage door closes, and the path unfolds into mist. You watch the palace lights fade into pinpricks, then vanish. Ahead, the horizon is tinged with dawn, pale and forgiving, a fresh stage for your exile drama. Joke: when life gives you exile, make provincial lemonade. You settle on a velvet cushion, scroll folded beside you, heart heavy with uncertainty. You remember the silk-gagged humming in the midnight hall, the crack of the whip on marble, the taste of ginger lotus seeds forced down your throat. You recall Li Wei's trembling voice promising loyalty. Exile might cost you more than palace chains ever did. Under your breath, you repeat the verse you penned for him. In exile's shadow, our whispers endure, letting the words steady your spirit. The carriage rattles over cobblestones into the unknown. Each jolt feels like a note in the final stanza of your palace saga. You lean against the door, eyes closing as the first sunbeam pierces the gray sky. Somewhere in the provinces, new duties await, entertaining wary officials reciting poems. Under unfamiliar roofs, trading jade pendants for provincial favors. The road ahead is uncharted, and mercy here is as fragile as lotus petals drifting on water. You breathe in the scent of damp earth and jasmine, stepping toward a life rewritten. The palace's echo fades behind you, replaced by the promise of dawn's gentle hum. And as the carriage carries you toward a distant sunrise, you realize that exile may break you, but it cannot silence the poetry forged in your bones. Slow the pacing now, soften every phrase, and let your breath settle into the whisper of dawn. You breathe out the lingering echoes of palace intrigues and taste freedom's tentative sweetness in cool morning air. The road ahead stretches wide and open, threaded with mist and possibility, as if the world itself has paused to watch you step into the unknown. Your heart, once bound by silk and jade, now flutters with quiet hope. Each breath deepens, settling dust from old memories, smoothing sharp edges into gentle curves. Feel the soft hum of wheels turning beneath you, a lullaby for weary souls, guiding you toward landscapes uncharted and horizons unclaimed. The weight of chains, real or imagined, melts away under the touch of dawn's gentle light. You remember the kintsugi plate's golden seams, each crack made beautiful by healing. So too can your spirit gather its fractured pieces and gleam. Once more, in this moment, let mercy wash over you like a warm breeze through bamboo groves, carrying away the sting of judgment and whispering that every exile is also a rebirth. The scent of lotus blossoms mingles with the promise of fresh rice fields and open skies. You close your eyes, listening to cicada's distant song, and imagine Li Wei's voice carried on the wind, soft and unwavering, now as your carriage glides onward. Trust in the resilience etched into your bones. Let the hush of morning fold around you, a silken shroud of reassurance and calm. Feel the world breathe with you, heart to heart, and know that beyond these gates, your story is still being written, one gentle step at a time.